The colonial ship Stardust Drifter emerged from the depths of space like a ghost returning from the grave. 70 years after its disappearance near the gravitational anomaly known as the Void Maw, it materialized in Mars orbit with no warning, no distress signal, and no explanation. Captain Eliza Chun of Mars Orbital Defense was the first to spot the anomaly on her scanners. She'd been tracking debris patterns in the outer asteroid belt when the signature appeared, impossibly intact and impossibly still. "Command, we have an unidentified vessel in Sector 7, she reported, running another scan to confirm what she was seeing. "Configuration matches. Wait, that can't be right. Clarify, Captain Chun." The voice from Phobos Base was crisp, professional. "Sir, configuration matches the Stardust Drifter. Colonial vessel, reported lost in 2153. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Humanity had expanded cautiously into the solar system over the past century, always haunted by the specter of lost ships and failed colonies. The United Solar Federation, the USF, had established strict protocols after the tragic losses of the early expansion era. No ship ventured beyond established routes without constant communication and tracking. No colony established without years of preparation and testing. And yet the Stardust Drifter had vanished, along with its 300 colonists. Swallowed by the gravitational anomaly, they had been expressly forbidden to approach. "Stand by, Captain," Command finally responded. "We're dispatching a specialized investigation team from Phobos Base. Maintain observation, but do not approach. Repeat, do not approach." Commander Eva Rostova stood in the Phobos Base briefing room, studying the preliminary scans of the Stardust Drifter with thinly veiled skepticism. The readouts showed energy signatures that defied the laws of physics as she understood them, and structural modifications that should have been impossible given the technology available during the Drifter's era. "This has to be a mistake," she said, turning to the lanky figure beside her. "These energy readings suggest a power source we haven't even theorized yet." Dr. Eris Thorne didn't look up from his tablet, his fingers moving rapidly across the surface as he annotated the scans. "Not a mistake," he mumbled. "Fascinating. Actually, the hull integrity is perfect, but the composition has evolved." Rostova frowned. She hadn't wanted Thorne on this mission, but Command had insisted. The brilliant xenophysicist had been ostracized from mainstream scientific circles after publishing theories about non-human intelligences capable of manipulating fundamental forces. His theories were considered too radical, too dangerous for a humanity still licking its wounds from previous encounters with the unknown. But his expertise in exotic physics made him invaluable for this particular mystery. "Evolved?" she repeated. "Metal doesn't evolve, Dr. Thorne." He finally looked up, his eyes bright with excitement. "Exactly. Which means whatever we're looking at isn't just metal anymore." He gestured to a section of a scan. "The molecular structure is in constant flux, yet maintaining perfect cohesion. It's almost like what? Like it's breathing." 12 hours later, Rostova led a team of 8 specialists toward the silent Stardust Drifter. Their shuttle approached cautiously, external sensors gathering every possible reading. Besides Thorne and herself, the team included 2 security officers, a medical specialist, an engineering expert, and 2 communications technicians. "Remember the protocols," Rostova reminded them as they prepared to dock. "Level 4 containment procedures at all times. We don't touch anything without scanning it first. We don't separate. And at the first sign of biological contamination, we evacuate immediately." The team nodded, their expressions grim beneath their helmets. Everyone knew the stories of the early exploration disasters, the Jupiter incident, the Callisto outbreak. No one wanted to repeat those mistakes. The docking procedure went smoothly, too smoothly, given the age of the ship. The airlock accepted their approach and cycled open without any override codes needed. Rostova frowned. This wasn't a good sign. As they stepped into the ship's main corridor, the first discrepancies became immediately apparent. The interior layout matched the original blueprints of the Stardust Drifter, but every surface was covered in faint, luminescent circuitry that pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm. The walls felt unnaturally warm to the touch, even through their gloves. And the air, which should have been stale after 70 years, smelled of ozone and unfamiliar spices. "This is impossible," whispered Sergeant Kai, one of the security officers. "The life support systems couldn't possibly still be functioning." Thorne ran his scanner over the walls, his expression eager. "They're not, at least not, the original systems. These circuits," he touched one gently, and it brightened in response. "They're semi-organic, almost like bioluminescent veins." Rostova pulled his hand back sharply. "Protocol, Dr. Thorne." "Yes, of course," he said, not sounding apologetic at all. "But Commander, we're dealing with technology far beyond our understanding. The protocols may not be sufficient." They moved deeper into the ship, documenting everything with their helmet cameras. The main habitat ring should have contained the colonists' living quarters, hydroponics bays, and community spaces. Instead, they found something that sent a chill down Rostova's spine. The colonists were still there, not as corpses, not as skeletons, but suspended in translucent, cocoon-like structures that lined the walls of the habitat ring. Their bodies were intact, but transformed, integrated with complex technology that glowed with the same pulsing light as the ship's circuitry. Their eyes were closed, but subtle movements of their facial muscles suggested consciousness. "Are they alive?" asked Dr. Naya Patel, the medical specialist, her voice barely above a whisper. Thorne approached one of the cocoons, scanning it intensely. "In a sense, their biological functions appear suspended, but there's significant neural activity. They're thinking, perhaps even dreaming." Rostova felt a deep unease settle in her stomach. "Can we communicate with them?" "I doubt it," Thorne replied, moving from one cocoon to the next. "At least not conventionally. Their neural patterns are extraordinary, synchronized, yet distinct. It's as if they're part of a network." Security Officer Rivera stepped forward, hand hovering near his sidearm. "Commander, we should consider these colonists compromised. USF protocol dictates." "I know the protocol," Rostova cut him off. "But these are human beings, Officer Rivera. We don't abandon our own." They attempted to interface with the ship's systems, hoping to access logs or communication arrays, but their USF technology was either incompatible or actively rejected. Standard access ports wouldn't connect, and wireless signals bounced back distorted. Thorne, however, found a resonance point, a console-like structure that responded to specific biological signatures. When he placed his palm on its surface, the entire panel illuminated, displaying symbols and patterns that shifted and changed as if responding to his thoughts. "It's rudimentary, but I'm getting something," he said, his voice tight with concentration. "The ship seems to be evaluating me." Before Rostova could order him to disengage, a low, thrumming buzz began to emanate from deep within the ship. It wasn't loud, but it seemed to bypass their ears entirely, resonating directly in their skulls. Several team members reported immediate sensory effects: mild disorientation, transient visual distortions, a metallic taste on their tongues. "Something's scanning us," Thorne said, a note of wonder in his voice. "The ship, or whatever's controlling it, is curious." "That's not comforting, Doctor," Rostova replied. She made a swift decision. "We need more information about the ship's propulsion system. If we understand how it returned from the Void Maw, we might understand what happened to it." Thorne shook his head. "The energy readings from the engine room are extremely unusual. We should proceed with caution. That's why we're sending in a probe first," Rostova said firmly. She nodded to Engineer Alvarez, who deployed a small, spherical drone from her pack. The drone hummed to life, its sensors calibrated to transmit data directly to their tablets. They guided the probe through the ship's corridors toward the engine room. The buzz grew more intense as they approached, and the luminescent circuitry pulsed faster. When the probe finally entered the engine compartment, its cameras revealed a sight that defied comprehension. Instead of the standard fusion core that should have powered the Stardust Drifter, there was a swirling vortex of geometric impossibility, a whirlpool of light and structure that seemed to fold in upon itself endlessly. It was the source of the buzzing, which now took on an almost musical quality, layers of harmonics building upon each other in complex patterns. The probe's sensors spiked, their readings jumping to impossible levels before abruptly cutting out. On their screens, they watched as the probe itself began to disintegrate, not melting or breaking apart, but simply coming undone at a molecular level. A feedback pulse rippled through the ship, causing the luminescent circuits to flare brightly. Throughout the habitat ring, the eyes of the integrated colonists snapped open in unison, glowing with the same energy as the engine core. And suddenly, all communication with Phobos base went dead as the ship generated an interference field that blocked all transmissions. They were trapped. Rostova immediately established defensive protocols, setting up a secure perimeter in one of the ship's common areas. She assigned watch rotations and rationed their supplies, preparing for a prolonged isolation. Meanwhile, Thorne worked obsessively with the resonance panel, attempting to understand the ship's systems. His experiences were disjointed and overwhelming. Sensory inputs of alien landscapes, incomprehensible symbols, and raw emotions. Fear, awe, and desperation, flooding his consciousness in fragments. It's not just communicating, he explained during a team briefing. It's trying to share memories or experiences, but the interface is imperfect. Our minds weren't designed to process information this way. The integrated colonists had begun to move subtly within their cocoons. Their fingers twitched, their lips occasionally forming silent words. One of them, a middle-aged man with a scientist's insignia on his partially visible uniform, seemed particularly active. When Thorne approached his cocoon, he felt a mental contact that wasn't verbal but pure concept. Change. Survival. The Weavers. Threat. Thorne struggled to interpret these impressions, to give them context that his human mind could understand. Rostova remained skeptical, suspecting a trap or mass hallucination induced by unknown technology. Tension within the team escalated. Several soldiers reported hearing whispers when no one was speaking, seeing movement at the corners of their eyes. Fear and paranoia mounted as they remained cut off from Phobos base. Dr. Patel's medical scans of the team showed subtle neurological changes, increased activity in rarely used brain regions, synchronization patterns that mirrored the ship's pulsing rhythm. Whatever was happening wasn't just affecting the ship, it was affecting them as well. Thorne discovered fragmented logs, disjointed, corrupted data from the Drifter's original journey. They detailed the encounter with something in the void maw. Not an entity, but an invisible intelligence or force that reshaped matter and consciousness. The logs referred to this force as the Weavers. The crew had voluntarily integrated as a last resort against an external threat encountered after their transformation, something the logs mentioned only as hunters. The last coherent entry came from the ship's captain. We are becoming something new. Not human, not machine, but a synthesis. The Weavers have shown us the pattern of all things, the threads that bind reality. The hunters seek to sever those threads. We cannot return as we were. We can only adapt. Forgive us. While Thorne delved into the ship's mysteries, Rostova conducted her own investigation. She found evidence of conflict inside the ship after its return, traces of sophisticated energy weapons, non-human biological residue. She suspected the ship hadn't returned alone, or that it harbored inherent hostilities. Her suspicions were confirmed when a section of the ship's hull suddenly breached from within. A sleek, non-human drone composed of shifting chrome and organic tissue punctured through a bulkhead. It attacked the team with disorienting sonic pulses and energy tendrils that left burning wounds on contact. Simultaneously, several of the colonists' cocoons vibrated violently, projecting defensive energy fields that unintentionally harmed some of Rostova's team members, but also repelled the drone. The ship seemed to be in internal conflict. The battle was chaotic and brief. The drone moved with impossible speed, severely injuring Officer Rivera and Engineer Alvarez before Rostova managed to damage one of its sensory nodes with a precision shot. The drone retreated into the ship's maintenance ducts, but not before leaving 2 team members critically wounded and the rest shaken. As Dr. Patel stabilized the injured, Thorne made a breakthrough. The drone was connected to the external threat mentioned in the logs, the hunters, entities that pursued anything touched by the Weavers. The mental contact from the colonists is becoming clearer, he explained to Rostova as they regrouped. The Weavers offered transformation as a means of survival against the hunters. The Stardust Drifter became a living survival vessel, its technology interwoven with Weaver principles. In its return, Rostova asked, unplanned, the ship jumped instinctively to escape a hunter ambush, carrying a hunter drone as a stowaway. That's what attacked us, a scout or tracking device. Thorne had learned to consciously interact with the ship's simpler systems through the resonance panel, activating localized defenses like energy shields and subtle gravity manipulation. He felt the ship learning from him as much as he learned from it, an exchange of understanding that grew stronger with each interaction. Rostova, faced with the impossible, began to accept Thorne's interpretation but maintained military discipline. She focused on locating the drone and assessing the ship's true capabilities as a potential weapon or threat. They discovered the ship was slowly terraforming its interior, creating an environment suited for the integrated colonists but potentially hostile to regular humans. The air composition was gradually shifting and the ambient temperature rising. Time was running out for the investigation team. Meanwhile, USF Command on Earth, having received fragmented sensor data from Mars orbit before communications were lost, grew increasingly alarmed. They classified the Drifter as a Class 5 xenogenic contamination risk and authorized extreme containment protocols, mobilizing a heavily armed fleet. The team tracked the Hunter drone to the ship's bridge. It had self-integrated into the main control panel, attempting to seize control or transmit a signal. As they confronted it, the main screen flickered to life, displaying not space, but a glimpse of the Hunter perspective, massive, coldly geometric vessels converging on the solar system, alerted by the drone's presence. The drone released a devastating energy pulse just as Thorne, guided by the colonists' collective consciousness, severed its connection, overloading the drone but severely damaging the bridge systems. The bridge was crippled, external sensors offline. The Hunter fleet was confirmed approaching, days away at most. The USF fleet was also approaching Mars, preparing for forced boarding or orbital bombardment. The team was caught between 2 hostile forces. The colonists communicated a desperate plan, fully awaken the ship's core, the engine vortex. It was immensely powerful but unstable, capable of generating reality-warping waves to repel the hunters, but with the potential to tear the ship apart or even destabilize local space-time. Activating it required a baseline human mind to serve as a conscious anchor or conductor due to the unpredictable nature of human consciousness interacting with Weaver technology. Thorne was the logical choice, already partially attuned. He wrestled with the enormous risk and potential for irreversible personal transformation or sacrifice. Rostova faced her own conflict. Follow USF orders, potentially meaning the destruction of the Drifter and everyone aboard, or trust Thorne and alien technology, defying her superiors and risking catastrophe. She began to see the integrated colonists not as aberrations, but as human survivors who had changed out of necessity. Minor skirmishes erupted as remaining Hunter technology, nanites from the drone, attempted sabotage. The ship's internal defenses, weakly guided by Thorne and the colonists, fought back. After agonizing deliberation, Rostova made her decision. She ordered the team to secure the engine room and support Thorne, sending an encrypted, defiant message to the approaching USF fleet, warning them of the greater Hunter threat and declaring her intention to activate the Drifter's defensive systems. "This violates every protocol in the book," said Security Officer Kai, who had assumed Rivera's duties after his injury. "Sometimes survival requires breaking the rules," Rostova replied. These colonists faced an impossible choice 70 years ago. Now we face our own. Thorne entered the engine chamber. As he prepared to interface, the USF fleet arrived and issued a final ultimatum, launching initial kinetic strikes against the Drifter's outer hull. Simultaneously, the first Hunter Scout vessels materialized in real space near Jupiter, completely ignoring the USF ships and focusing on the Drifter. "It's now or never." Rostova's voice came through the comm as the ship shuddered under impact. Thorne placed his hands on the chamber's interface panel. "I don't know if I can control this," he admitted. "You don't need to control it," came a voice in his mind, the collective consciousness of the colonists. "You only need to direct it. We will stabilize the flow." Brilliant light erupted from the core as Thorne began the connection. He screamed as Weaver knowledge, the ship's history, and the cold intent of the hunters flooded his mind. The Drifter itself began reshaping physics, its hull glowing and transforming. From Rostova's perspective on the emergency bridge controls, it looked as if reality itself was bending around the ship. The Stardust Drifter, now a vessel of impossible energy and geometry, released Weaver waves. They didn't destroy, they rewrote. Space rippled around the ship. The USF's kinetic warheads dissolved into harmless particles mid-flight. Their advanced targeting systems malfunctioned, sensors overloaded with paradoxical data. The USF fleet was temporarily stunned. The Hunter Scout vessels were caught directly. Their geometric forms stuttered, fragmented, and unmade, collapsing not into debris, but into echoes of probability that faded from existence. The wave propagated outward, a visible distortion enveloping the inner solar system. On the emergency bridge, Rostova watched as the Hunter fleet's signatures disappeared from the tactical displays. Thorne, still physically present but radiating enormous energy, collapsed, unconscious but alive. The engine core stabilized, dimming but still humming with power. The integrated colonists glowed brightly, their collective consciousness having shielded Thorne from the worst feedback. The main Hunter fleet halted its advance beyond Jupiter, sensing the Weaver energy signature and the loss of their scouts. They paused, reassessing this unexpected, powerful challenge. The USF fleet, witnessing the incredible defense and receiving Rostova's disjointed but chilling warnings about the Hunters, ceased fire. A tense standoff ensued. Supreme Command fell into chaos as they debated how to respond to this unprecedented situation. Thorne slowly regained consciousness, changed. He retained his identity, but now perceived reality on multiple levels, intrinsically linked to the Drifter and Weaver knowledge. He could subtly influence the ship's systems with thought alone. The integrated colonists established clearer communication through Thorne, providing knowledge about the Weavers, passive reality shapers, and the Hunters, ancient enemies of uncontrolled change/complexity. They explained the Drifter was now a beacon of Weaver potential, marked by the Hunters. Rostova negotiated a tense ceasefire with the subdued USF command. They agreed to share intelligence about the Hunters. The Drifter remained under Rostova's command, technically rogue, but now humanity's first line of defense and understanding against cosmic threats. Thorne became the bridge between humanity and Weaver knowledge, working with the integrated colonists, who were gradually becoming more individually expressive and select, carefully screened USF scientists to understand the ship and its technology. The Stardust Drifter, no longer just a missing ship, became a symbol of forced evolution and defiance. It orbited Mars, a silent, shimmering testament to humanity's inadvertent leap onto a larger, more dangerous galactic stage. The Hunters remained out there, the Weavers mysterious, and humanity had to learn to use technology that shouldn't exist, facing a forever altered future. Earth hadn't vanished, but it had been irreversibly changed. As the weeks passed, more information emerged. The colonists, speaking through Thorne, revealed that the Weavers weren't entities, but a fundamental force, conscious mathematics expressing itself through matter. The Hunters were their antithesis, enforcers of cosmic stagnation, viewing complexity as corruption. "We stand at a precipice," Thorne explained to the USF Council, his eyes occasionally shimmering with Weaver energy. "The Hunters have marked our system not because of our technology, but because of our potential. Human consciousness, our creativity and unpredictability resonates with Weaver patterns." Rostova, now officially appointed as liaison between the Drifter and Earth, added, "The Stardust Drifter is both warning and gift. It shows us what's out there and what we might become to survive it." On the Drifter itself, the integrated colonists began to emerge from their cocoons, not fully human, but not entirely other. They moved through the ship like priests in a living temple, their thoughts both individual and collective. They recognized Thorne as kin, changed as they were changed, and Rostova as protector. The ship continued to evolve, developing new capabilities that defied classification. It could manipulate local space-time, generate shields that repelled matter and energy alike, and perceive threats across vast distances. But these powers came at a cost. The ship required conscious guidance, a continuous dialogue between human intention and Weaver principles. Beyond Jupiter, the Hunter fleet maintained its position, a geometric shadow waiting for weakness. Their presence was a continuous reminder that humanity's place in the cosmos was neither guaranteed nor protected. Earth's governments struggled to adapt to this new reality. Some factions demanded the Drifter be destroyed, seeing it as contamination. Others wanted to replicate its technology immediately, regardless of risks. A few called for humanity to seek Weaver transformation voluntarily, embracing transcendence. Through it all, the Stardust Drifter remained enigmatic. A ghost ship returned from the impossible, carrying warnings from beyond comprehension and gifts beyond understanding. It orbited silently, its hull shimmering with possibilities, its integrated crew watching the stars with new eyes, waiting for the next move in a game they had never chosen to play. And deep within its transformed heart, the engine core pulsed with Weaver energy, an answer to questions humanity had not yet learned to ask, and a challenge to threats they were only beginning to comprehend.